I'm joined by Dinah Ondari as we go through the papers. Karibu sana, Dinah. I won't even ask you about the World Cup because you said we talk about that semi-finals.
You
have
should.
Chosen a team closer to the finals.
You are only interested in knowing whether I have a team I'm supporting. I have several teams I'm supporting, so you should.
You're spreading your bets.
Yes.
Okay, let's start off, of course, with the People Daily. On the front page, this, of course, coming after a couple of pictures surfaced over the weekend of Peter Kenneth landing in Eldoret. Of course, he went there via chopper, was received by a couple of the DP's lieutenants on that one. And, of course, the question started to beg. Is there something in the offing here? Is this a coincidence? And as the headline gives, of course, we might be looking towards 2022. Ruto PK 2022 ticket mooted. Of course, this might be what is being termed probably the winning team that's needed. Jubilee intact and raring to go with Central Kenya, and Rift Valley legislators dismissing prophets of doom. Say Ruto with Kenneth as running mate is winning combination for 2022 poll.
It could be something that is in the offing, especially coming at a time when we are seeing or hearing about fears by the Central Kenya voting bloc,
right, which
is fearing that there are fears that in 2022 they could feel like they are going to be left out, knowing that right now their candidate is holding the presidency.
Right.
So if those who are behind the proposal to have Kenneth to be DP's running mate are seeking to quell these fears so that the Central Kenya voting bloc can feel comfortable that even in the next government we are going to be represented, because part of the politics has been that Ruto is not assured of the votes from the Central Kenya, seeing that Uhuru Kenyatta is going to retire and there is no obvious candidate to replace him in a top position in government. So it's a possibility we are looking at. Much as it is so early to speak, but I think everything is possible in politics.
And, you know, when this story came up, even if I'm not a certified political analyst, so just asking myself, when it comes to what they're terming a winning combination, this is a person who's tried presidency, didn't work out, tried governorship in the city, didn't work out. What is this that he's bringing to the table now that the DP feels like he might be able to, if he couldn't marshal troops for one county, how much more so the 47 that they'll have to traverse?
The issue to do with Nairobi politics, I would want to believe that it was not about his ability to wield votes, because I think he has leadership qualities, because we remember him as the Katanga MP, member of parliament, when he was ranked among one of the best members of parliament we had. So when it comes to leadership qualities, he has them. But in 2017, I think what happened is there were conflicting interests within Jubilee, because the current governor and Kenneth were both fighting for a Jubilee ticket. And there were so many conflicting interests. Sonko was saying, I've always been loyal to Jubilee, and then Peter Kenneth is an outsider and all that. So I think it all has to do with interest and the political will, because if the top leadership in Jubilee, and indeed the kingmakers, so to speak, decide that we are going to rally behind Peter Kenneth, then it's just as good as done. It all has to do with the strategy and how they negotiate. Yes.
Very true. And of course, we'll see if that actually has any truth to it, if we'll be having that ticket coming through. But still, this seems like a very long way off.
Yes, it is. I don't know why it's like we are already in the campaign period.
You know, they usually say after you finish campaigning and you get into office, the next day you start campaigning again for the next term.
Yeah, that's why it's called the election cycle, because it starts as soon as it ends, just like the budget. But I think the cycle should only apply to institutions like IEBC. For God's sake, these politicians have some work to do, so I think they should concentrate, but I don't think that's going to happen.
But as usual, in classic DP fashion, on a Monday morning, the DP says he is happy to serve. That's what he's doing. DP Ruto says Jubilee was formed with the objective of uniting Kenyans and developing the country. And as usual, that's what he wants people to stick to.
You know, one of these days, the DP is going to send an emissary here to talk to you because you've been on in his case forever.
I mean, you don't even have to think twice about what, I mean, the DP's utterances are going to be come Monday morning. We all know.
All right, he's the DP. There's no other DP in Kenya, so you have to deal with it.
Okay, we have 4 more years of that. Let's move on to the second page of the People Daily. There's an oil firm that's to sue over NYS links. An oil distribution firm, Petro Kenya Limited, has threatened to sue over a newspaper article implicating its directors in the National Youth Service scandal. Of course, this is coming from the fact that it was implicated as they say they were not beneficiaries through proxy or otherwise any funds from the NYS, which currently has live investigations and cases in court. So they feel that this is, of course, is a straight-up case of defamation on that, and they want this taken forward, of course, and might take this to court.
We are
to
going
clear
to
up their name.
Yeah, I think we are going to see so many suits and counter-suits because of the corruption, let me call it a crisis that is going on in the country. So many names are being thrown around, some fairly, some justifiably. So I think no company wants to be mentioned if there is no evidence or if it believes it's innocent. And even if there is evidence, you know, there is that what we call corporate image, and they always want to protect themselves.
Indeed.
May the best lawyers win in court.
Of course, and either of the lawyers, of course, will be just laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
Because it's the time they make the most on that. Still on the second page of the People Daily, and still matters to do with courts. KEB's boss to be charged today over fake products. Ongwae and other top officials to answer to charges of allowing contraband goods into the country. And of course, this is a major case because, especially when talking about the fact that not only are these counterfeit goods, these are goods that actually have direct implications on the health and lives of Kenyans. Talking about sugar laden with copper and I mean all of these substances. And people are wondering, okay, then what really is your job? If millions and tons of sugar can get into the country, what's your job at the helm?
Yeah, Ongwae and his team really have a lot of questions to answer because they are the ones who measure the standards of the quality of goods that come into the country, and the questions that are being asked: how did those goods find their way into the market if indeed they contain the harmful substances? And yet we have a body that should always assure Kenyans of the quality of the products that they take. But I also think that it should not only stop at KEBS, because KEBS is under a ministry which has a CS. We have importation of goods doesn't just happen. There is a whole lot of ministries that are involved. So I think they should continue casting that net wider until everyone who has a hand or who should have been responsible in ensuring that only quality goods get into the country is brought to accountability.
Okay.
Yes.
Of course, and we can get that story on the second page of the People Daily. Let's move on to the third page of the PD. Of course, it's all about Michael Muraya giving you a wacky world. When players pay heavy penalty for loss, this, of course, is when it comes to football, I mean, passions go to a whole different level, and people just lose their minds. Some of the decisions made there, well, you wonder if you can just say it's just a game. In these circumstances, probably not. It's more than a game. This is life, and Michael Muraya is proving just that. Shiro?
This is the best time to have these kinds of conversations, especially given that the first round in the ongoing World Cup is currently wrapping up. There's just some teams that have shocked us with the kind of dismal performances they have shown us. But as Michael Muraya proves to us, that there are measures that are taken by the countries they play for just to ensure that poor performances do not become a habit. Let's start off with what happened in the year 2000 after the Africa Cup of Nations. Now, the Ivory Coast national team, which, as we all know, is called the Elephants, was detained by military authorities in an army camp following their early elimination. Now, the Ivory Coast team was eliminated following a poor run in 3 matches. And, of course, they were going to receive quite a hostile welcome back home. So, according to the spokesman for the military government, they said that the squad was being held for their own protection against possible reprisal. But reports indicate that players were beaten, subjected to forced labor, made to frog march, and attend lectures on patriotism. Now, let's talk about a team which has just performed so horribly at this World Cup that it's just shocking. They've become the butt of internet jokes all over the world, and that is Saudi Arabia. So apparently they've had such a horrible run. The first game, they were just received a complete hammering by Russia, 5-0. And of course, the Saudi Football Federation, Adel Ezzat, announced last week that the members of the team will face, in quotes, penalties for the horrible performance. And he goes on to say that they're very disappointed by the defeat, and the result is completely unsatisfactory because it does not reflect the true level of their preparations. So, of course, he's actually singled out specific players that will face a penalty: the goalkeeper, Abdallah Al-Mayouf, striker Mohammed Al-Salawi, and defender Omar Hausawi. Oh my gosh, if it was them, why would I go back home and seek asylum? Then, of course, this is North Korea that actually decided, once North Korea was being beaten in a game, they just pulled the plug on live feed. Like, you cannot watch humiliation like this. So basically, the team on several instances was subjected to harassment over unsatisfactory results. The team was once dispatched to work in coal mines as punishment following an early exit from the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. They considered the most goals in the competition. This was in its first World Cup since 1966. So not only were they made to work in a coal mine, live feeds were yanked out. Yeah, South Korea seems to be one of those places that one would not want to live long-term, Jeff.
The pressure of, being a soccer player, already representing your country at an international stage, and then at the back of your mind, you still know that if you don't win, you'll end up in a coal mine somewhere. Not the best frame of mind to be in when you're playing a game.
North Korea is a crazy country.
You'll get those details, of course, in your People Daily. All the stories in there. Thank you so much for that, Shiro. We now move on to the Standard, and it seems like the total man and his will have made the front page there. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's a trend that is emerging that we can now get to see what the wills of people of interest to society are. And Standard is writing about secrets of a total man's weird will. Now, they are reporting that in his will, Nicholas Biwott says he has left nothing for his 3 other wives. The only wife, he has left his property to only one wife. And even without going further, I hope this is not the beginning of another long court battle. Right. I hope he had any other ways of settling the other family members, because it says that former powerful cabinet minister left bulk of his wealth to his wife, Johanna Henny. His will said nothing about the other 2 wives paraded with family at burial. And another pointer is, in a streak of generosity, he left his jointly held wealth to his business partners. So, just a question. I don't want to sound judgmental because really it's his money. But I'm wondering, why would he leave a lot of his property to his business allies and not his family?
It is indeed a question in there. But they always say that you never know what happened in those last moments of his life. Probably when he was writing the will, maybe that's when we had the last argument, the biggest fallout. Yes. And I'm like, Dinah, you don't even deserve any of my money, and you just strike you off the will. You really never know. You really never know.
And I just like that he listed in his children in capital letters. I think that was for emphasis as beneficiaries, but we didn't see this coming because the families looked very united during the funeral. But as I said earlier, it is his money. He could have done whatever he wanted to do with it.
Interestingly, also, they were talking about the fact that he set aside 10 million shillings for maintenance of his grave.
Whoa.
10 million Kenya shillings. So, just in case you're thinking you might have to do Harambe later on, no. He has sorted himself out.
Makes sense.
Even in the afterlife.
That is where he will be spending the rest of his life, or afterlife, as you have called it.
Interesting stuff.
Started have another story about the new fight against state abuse of mobile phones. Now, this is a precedent-setting move from the U.S. Supreme Court, which has voted for privacy of devices as custodians of personal secrets, such as business deals and sex. Now, this turns the focus on Kenya, where security agencies access such information during probe. I hope this is a story that will form us inspirational to our lawmakers, because in Kenya we have given rights to our security agencies to listen in to our conversations, to read our texts, and go through data that is supposed to be private, all in the name of fighting crime. Do you think it's a good thing?
It's very interesting when you talk about that, because by the time there's a probe like that being made, especially if there's some impropriety of sorts, if it's business or a scandal, if we can't get to those records, then how will we ever ascertain that indeed you received some money, Jeff, you got some money, Dinah, so of course, and here's the evidence. This will be the quickest way for them to hide any paper trail. I
don't know. Me, I'll have to think about it.
The jury is still out on that one.
Yes.
Okay, that's some interesting stuff right there.
Yeah, and the rest of the stories have to do with the World Cup. They are saying that Honda drives Japan into a vital draw. Of course, that is a very interesting headline there, talking about substitute Keisuke Honda equalized with 12 minutes, leaving Japan twice pegged backs Senegal in a thrilling 2-2 draw. Now, this is the match between Senegal and Japan. And it was a very interesting match to watch. Indeed, for me, it was the match of the day. And, of course, I was supporting Senegal. But I think they kind of played like NASA and Jubilee, because and Jubilee in this case being Senegal and Japan being NASA, that idea of wakiscore tunascore, because Senegal was setting the pace, no doubt. And I felt like if they would have just pushed themselves a little bit harder, then they could have scored the third goal, then Japan wouldn't have had a chance to retaliate. But I think they did. They played a good game. They
played their best. Of course, yes. I mean, a nail-biting match indeed, that one. And everyone was hoping that we finally made it. The second goal for Senegal, of course, everyone saying, okay, we are home and dry. And then that equalizer, and people were just beside themselves.
Yeah, all said and then I think Japan was a tough team to handle, and Senegal really brought out its best. Yeah.
Okay, so of course you can get more details on that in your Standard. Let's quickly move on to the Daily Nation. Not good news at all. On the front page, just fresh out of the budget, and people talking about how the cost of living is going to rise, and of course all those implications, tighten your belts. You're told all these things after the budget is read. And then a headline like this just slaps you across the face. Plan to pay MPs more. There's a fresh proposal by a House team that also seeks not only to raise monthly allowances of legislators, but they also want to refurbish their cafeteria and their pub, which will be refurbished and, of course, equipped with larger teapots, sleek counters, and will be manned by 5-star hotel quality chefs. Dinah, honestly, are these the priorities we need to be having at a time like this? Surely.
It's not surprising coming from our members of parliament, because they would go to any length to make themselves comfortable. They say, I don't know how much uncomfortable they are right now, but they are the lawmakers. And I don't know what miracle we need to convince them that they do not need to go further in dipping their hands into the taxpayers' pocket. But just wait. There is a parliamentary square coming, and they have built underground tunnels and everything. So I think this is just a tip of the iceberg.
So you can see all they're doing. They want to make sure the only time they need to deal with you, Mwananchi, is when they need your vote.
Yeah.
After they've gotten your vote, they'll have their own chefs. They'll use their own tunnels. They'll use their own SUV cars.
They still have their own chefs. They still have their own cafeteria. They still have their own bar, but they want to take it to, I think, world-class levels, because they say they have been benchmarking all over the world, and they don't think the treatment they've been getting befits their stature.
That's just disgusting.
I think we should just leave it to the taxpayer and the voter to decide.
It is just disgusting, absolutely. Okay, still on the front page. Was it a case of murder or suicide? The curious case of Gerald. Now, he posted on his Facebook page that he was tired of living a dreary life, and hours later, his body was found dangling from a tree. And the big question is, did he commit suicide, Gerald Mwangi, or was he murdered? You can get the inside story on that, of course, inside your Daily Nation. Also on the front page, rapper priest sent packing. Now, of course, this particular priest made waves online, of course, in Migori, as he was trying to, get the youth to come to church and use a method and a mode of communication that they would understand. And he was rapping. Yeah. But it seems like going down this particular route is what landed him the ban, of course, and he's been sent packing on that. The decision to reprimand Paul Ogalo was met yesterday with lots of mixed reactions, of course, even as staunch believers of the strict doctrines of the church, saying it was wise, as others, the young, of course, just said that this was not the way to go, and these are the people who bring them to church, and they're the ones who are sent packing, so how will they ever come and fill the pews?
It was interesting to hear if you read the story, it tells you about the boss who issued the suspension letter saying that the priest should change his ways. So I'm wondering, I think maybe the Catholic Church has a manual on how priests should behave, but I'm thinking even David in the Bible danced for the Lord and they removed their clothes and he was drunk. I don't know. This is a religious issue, very sensitive, of course, and we'll just leave it. Maybe God will deal.
Of course, on that one, of course, like we said, it's a religious issue, and of course, they take it from there. Yeah. Let's finally look at the Star on the front page. Like we said, we are barely midway through 2018, but we're talking about the headaches for 2022, and that's the headache that's on the front page, apparently. Ruto's running mate headache for 2022. You know, when there are heavy clouds and the rain is about to fall, said the former Gatanga MP, Peter Kenneth. So another, of course, allusion there as to the fact that probably this might be the person to watch as far as filling the running mate seat for DP Ruto is concerned.
Yes, indeed. It's not by coincidence that Peter Kenneth just came out of nowhere and declared support for President Uhuru Kenyatta, and then he was speaking in resonance with members from Ruto's side. So it tells you that there's been a lot of behind-the-scenes politicking and negotiations, and I think he's the man to watch. Let's wait and see how it pans out.
Okay, we'll definitely wait and see how that particular cookie crumbles on that.